Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide, available on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Most homeowners don't have the time or expertise to properly take care of their home, which causes costly issues to arise. That's where Cura Home Maintenance comes in. We're a full-service, routine maintenance company that was developed by a certified home inspector. Each quarter, we service our clients' homes following manufacturer's recommendations to properly maintain all the necessary appliances. We provide the materials and expertise to prolong the life of your property, creating a healthy and efficient environment for your family. From top to bottom, we'll maintain and service your home. To get started, we have a property inspection to determine what needs to be maintained, and a maintenance plan is created based on your preferences. From refrigerator coils to filters, vents, and drains, we do it all, and we do it well. Contact us today for your free routine maintenance inspection, and never worry about your maintenance again.
Nick Burke and Dante on the Riderflex podcast for the second time. Hello, Nick. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back on. I'm a return guest, so I guess I did something right the first time.
Oh man, great interview the first time. I was listening to it on the treadmill this morning, and you did such a great job of just being open about family and who you are as a person, just really genuine, right? Authentic. I mean, we get that a lot from guests, but sometimes guests are just so I don't know if sheltered is the right word, or careful or overly cautious, and they won't share. And you did a great job of just really opening yourself up. So I'm glad to have you.
Thanks. Well, I think people sometimes are, cautious or reserved about sharing their stories in general. Well, then you have the other side of it. People on social media overshare, sharing stuff you don't want to. Where it's like, hey, let's, So, but I'm glad it resonated.
Speaking of social media, that's when I see your name is Twitter specifically, and usually it's something about hockey most of the time.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. My social media presence is interesting because I don't even have Facebook, or I have it, but so people will be like, hey, I never see you do anything on Facebook. I'm like, I haven't checked it in 15 years. I don't know what to tell you. I get updates about our homeowners association. That's about it. And then, LinkedIn, you try to be a little more
Sure.
Professional oriented, and you focus on your business and all that. Instagram is just photos of pizza and my kids. That's it. Pizza and my kids. And then Twitter is where all it's sports stuff. I spent I don't know, 5-6 years where I was doing sports analytics and analyzing deals for player agents and also for teams, and helping them to try to navigate how to figure out a resolution for a contract and things like that. So it became it kind of developed a social media presence because I was doing that. People that follow hockey started following me.
Yep.
And so then now there's this expectation I'll keep pumping out, stuff about hockey. I don't have as much time now, man. I've got the business, I've got kids. It's
yeah.
So, but yeah, I try to keep them happy. They get really frustrated if I talk about other stuff. I'll talk about Italian soccer, and they're like, that's not why we're here. Unfollow.
How old are the kids now?
So I've got a 6-year-old boy. He's in kindergarten, and then we've got a 3-year-old going on 4, and I hear her out there. So if you hear noise,
man, it's busy at your house, buddy. The two toddlers. Oh man, yeah. There's always something going on.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. It's just my wife takes a ton of, she gets a ton of credit for all the work she does with the kids. That gives me a little bit more time to focus on, on our business and what we're doing with our patients, which is good. And then what I just try to focus on time blocking myself and allotting enough time for both, right? To spend time with family. And yeah, we got 3 dogs. We have a full house. We have a turtle somewhere upstairs. We got it. Yeah.
And you're in your early 40s. I don't know how you have the energy. Plus, you're an entrepreneur, plus a CEO. Yeah, it's man. At the end of the day, are you just like, okay, I'm just
Well, I think what happens, for anybody who has kids, they understand like the first year or two, you don't sleep, right? It's you're up in the middle of the night. And that's just rolled on. Like that's just been my steady state for, since we had our first in 2017. It's just been that. So, when I started PursueCare really in earnest in 2019, I was already like well versed on not getting sleep. It was just focusing some time towards that as opposed to changing diapers and, feeding the baby.
Takes a lot of energy. We're grandparents now. I have 2 granddaughters. One is 5 and one is 3. And when we watch them, like we'll watch them for like a day, right? Gosh, Nick, at the end of the day, I'm like, holy shit, this takes a lot of energy. Like I forgot how much energy this takes. I mean, wow.
Yeah, I try to convince my parents. They're good. Look, they live close by. They're pretty good about
Cool.
They'll take the kids and all that. But so like my dad, throughout the years I've worked with my dad. I think, as I think you've worked with him too. But so he's still going strong, running healthcare practices and being involved. He's involved with PursueCare as a board member.
Nice.
So, he's like, hey, I already served my time, Nick. Like, I can't take your kids too. I raised you.
How old is your dad now?
Let's see. He is 70. Oh no, am I overdating him? Oh my gosh. And yeah, now I need to know this. 71? Yeah.
71. Okay. Yeah, what a great story from your dad too. I should have him on the podcast. Dropped off on Ellis Island, right? Immigrant from Italy. Yep. And made his own way, ended up going into to be a pharmacist and then starting a company and then having an exit, et cetera. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Great. Yeah. He has a great story too, for sure.
Yeah. He's got, it's, I mean, a lot of, I think I owe a lot of, obviously what I've learned about being an entrepreneur and hard work and all that, but just also the lack of sleep, just having a motor that doesn't stop that's genetic.
Has he softened a little bit with the grandkids, or he's still pretty hardcore?
No, he's definitely softened. I mean, I don't know if he'd admit he's softened, but he, I think from when I'm a kid to how he spoils, young Sam Mercadante. He, there's a lot of extra toys and stuff in our house that just appear because Grandpa brought him out and bought him something.
Pretty cool, man. That's great. And how's life in Connecticut? Good still? Everything's still good in the Northeast?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. We are we like it here. Like I think a lot of folks more frequently now move around, families move around. And I don't know, some of that is work, and some of it is, I think it's different than it used to be. Maybe people don't plant the roots quite as deep and buy a home and all those things. So, a lot of people really through their 20s, 30s, and even into their 40s, they still, are like, hey, I'm going to pick up and move someplace new and chase a job or whatever it is. you know, you have more people in the family that are careerists, and
Yep.
but it's for us, we like it in Connecticut. You know, it's a beautiful place. It's not cheap here, but it's
No.
it's home, you know. So
The winters, I remember my first winter. I don't know if you remember this, but I lived in Connecticut for 3 years
I
back.
remember, yeah, you told, yep.
Yeah. I remember our first winter there. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is
Well, look, it's so that's the interesting thing. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about this, but it's gotten progressively more mild. So I
okay.
think there is something to that whole global warming thing. I
Okay.
don't know, but it's you know, when I was a kid, and you know, I remember up until like my 20s, I mean, we would have winter where we get dumped on, you know,
Yeah.
foot and a half of snow at a clip. And it was fun when you're a kid. It's fun. But it's more mild now. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll flip flop. We'll become the retirement community, and Florida will become you know.
Who knows? Too hot to live in. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the business, PursueCare. By the way, for the listeners, pursuecare.com. I'd like for you to, you've been on the show, but I'd like for you to give another brief overview. And then I just have lots of update questions about, you know, how things are going. And then I want to ask about the market, and I have a whole host of things I want to chat about. But before we get into that, let's do a quick overview for the listeners. PursueCare, it's pursuecare.com. We want to give another quick 3-minute overview.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So PursueCare is the way that I like to describe it is it's a virtual clinic for substance use disorder treatment and broader behavioral health needs of people that are struggling predominantly with substance use disorder or addiction, depending on how you refer to it. And what I mean by that virtual clinic is that most of the care that we provide, we do just like we're doing this today, right? We do it via video, telemedicine. We have an app that our patients would download on their phone. It's got a bunch of tools and features for their care, tracking their care plan, tracking their medications, and scheduling appointments, chatting with their care team. And then we're delivering our care while they're in the comfort of their home, or, you know, we'll treat patients when they're taking a 15-minute break from work and they're in their car, wherever it's needed. That's where we are, right? And so we're able to cross a lot of barriers to addiction treatment that are pretty pervasive. People especially in rural communities, they just don't have access to high quality treatment for substance use disorder. Medical care, it's hard to go and talk with your primary care doctor, or even find one that is willing to work with you and get you medications that you need to recover from opioids, for instance. That's challenging for a lot of people in rural communities in particular, but everywhere. Finding high quality counseling and mental health therapy to go along with that, it can be challenging as well and time consuming. And then also we do psychiatry too, for patients that are struggling with serious mental illness and other conditions like that. So all those things are really tough to access. Just, you know, try calling a mental health provider. They might say, hey, look, it's 5 months until I can see you, you know? And then never mind the fact that you have to get in the car, drive to the clinic. You're going to take time out of work or time out of childcare. You know, by the time you're done with that, all of that, you might have a 30-minute visit that actually took you 2.5 hours to accomplish, right?
Yes.
So it's really challenging from that perspective for people. So this helps to solve for that. And then the other thing it helps to solve for is cost for our patients, but also for the health plans that we work with. We're covered by all insurances in the 13 states where we treat patients. We work extensively with Medicaid and Medicare populations, but we,
All right.
we work with commercial insurances. It's covered on the plan. Many times there's no copay. It's a low cost form of treatment that is very easy to access for patients. So that's really important.
And a one-stop shop, right? I can, if I am do you call them clients, customers, patients? What do you, patients?
Patients, yeah, we call all of our patients are patients.
Okay. And so if I'm a patient and I'm a member or I sign up for PursueCare, I can talk to my psychiatrist. I can get my medications filled from a pharmacy, and I can also talk to a doctor, all three.
Correct. Yeah. And what we do traditionally is so I think one of the important things about our model that we're really proud of is we're not just like a direct to consumer model. If somebody finds us on the web and they contact us, absolutely, we'll take them into our care. We're taking dozens of patients every day, right?
Okay.
Are signing up for treatment.
Okay.
And many on their own. But the big thing for us is we work very extensively with community health treaters. So we're working with your local hospitals and health systems, primary care offices, community health centers, to help to create a warm handoff or a transition of care opportunity for people that get identified as with a need. So if you could imagine somebody that ends up in the emergency room because of a crisis, what comes next? Oftentimes it's nothing, right? It's a discharge plan with call somebody and figure it out. What we'll do is we'll create a transition point there where actually the staff at the emergency room helps to introduce them to our care. And then we take over. We have patient access specialists that talk to the patient, tell them about what we do and how we do it, get a better understanding of what their needs are, and set them up with their care team for the initial evaluation and developing a treatment strategy.
So most of your patients are coming from a primary care doctor or a hospital stay or some other facility that says, hey, Johnny, listen, you should probably use PursueCare, and then they're connecting. That's
exactly. And about 75% of our patients come from exactly that. And the other thing I think it's helpful to understand is in most of those settings, you don't have those conversations routinely. Most people, whether you're in healthcare, right, you're going to get your annual wellness exam done with your primary care, or you're kind of outside of it. When you get sick, you go to an urgent care because you don't have a primary care provider, they're not accessible. Right. Either of those scenarios, you frequently, if you're somebody struggling with substance use disorder, which, let's be blunt, there's 30 million plus people in this country that meet the DSM-5 criteria for having substance use disorder. Right.
What is that criteria? I don't mean to go down a rabbit hole to get you off flow here, but what is that criteria real quick?
It's to boil it down to like a 10-second is that their use of substances impacts or impairs their quality of life, their ability to get through their daily activities.
I got you.
Right. And so there's a whole spectrum, right? Mild, very mild, early stage, and then very severe. What we know about and what we equate with addiction is the severe. It's when somebody it's calcified, right? It's been 5-10 years of substance use disorder that results in people ending up in a very bad place, losing their job, losing their family, being in and out of the emergency room. That's when we traditionally in healthcare intervene, right? And that's too late. It's too late. It should be happening at the beginning when it's mild. We should be making and normalizing mental health assessments and substance use assessments to help people to navigate into preventive care for that, just like you do with anything else. Just like when a doctor hits your knee and looks in your ear and all of those things, it should just be normalized, and it's not yet. So what we're trying to do, our big vision and big strategy is to normalize that. And then when that occurs, it shouldn't be all on the primary care provider to figure it out. They should have a resource, a partner that can help them so when they have that conversation with the patient, the very next thing that happens is, and we have somebody that can help you with that, and let's introduce them to you so we can start that process.
And historically, what has it been? If I went to my primary care doctor and he said, "Hey, you have a problem," what was happening in the past? He would say, there's a facility that I want to refer you to, and he writes me a referral, and then I try to get into the facility, and it's a 5-month wait. Was that what was?
If that, I think if you're lucky, whether it's a plan thing like you just said, or coming out of the emergency room, you have your kind of disposition of care, your summary of next steps. Everybody gets that sheet of paper.
Okay.
And on there it will say follow up with, and maybe it gives you a list with phone numbers, right?
I see. Mm-hmm.
If that, right? If that. So a lot of it is kind of left to chance. It's maybe if you have a doc who's tapped in and they know a local clinic or rehab facility, if the patient needs inpatient care or detox, they might refer for you. But then the issue is, do they have capacity? And most don't, right? They're packed.
Most don't.
Yeah. But I think a lot of the times it's just left to chance. It's just like, hey, you should do something about this. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. And most people don't. Most people don't follow up. I mean, but the
It's
percentage
hard.
of people? Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I always tell folks, like, because again, it's a lot of it is about normalizing that addiction and substance use disorder, mental health issues are everywhere. They're in every family.
Totally. Yep.
They're, and we've got to kind of overcome that culturally. But I think even with that, it's hard for people to follow up on any type of healthcare. How many of us have nagging, my shoulder, my neck has been bothering me forever. Do I go to physical therapy all the time like I'm supposed to? Do I do the exercises? No, I don't. At some point, it's going to get so bad that I have to.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we have to start normalizing, like, that's how you got to think about substance use disorder as well. Is like, am I drinking too much? I don't know. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Let's have some experts try to figure that out and then help us with a plan for how to manage that, right? And that should be happening.
What percentage of your patients are addicts versus mental health versus like bipolar or something versus depression? Like what's the breakdown?
Yeah, so for us, we really cast ourselves as substance use disorder treatment experts, right? That's our expertise is focusing on that.
Okay.
First as a primary diagnosis. So really, about 85% of our patients, that's
I see
what they're coming to us for first and foremost. Now, of that group, over 70% of those patients have what's called a comorbid mental health condition.
I see.
And that can run on a spectrum, right? It can be something as simple as, mild depression, or it can be something much more complex, true serious mental illness, for instance. And so there's a spectrum there, but as you can tell, most of the patients that we serve have some need for that help as well. And it makes sense. A lot of substance use disorder is brought on by, whatever you want to call it, self-diagnosing, trying to, live day to day and get through your day with a mental health issue. A ton of patients we have experienced trauma, and that is,
I see.
It's a little chicken and egg, but a lot of our patients, it started with trauma, and then it advanced to substance use disorder as well.
Trauma as in they were in a car wreck and they had a major injury and then they started taking pills.
It could be that, or it could be mental health trauma as well, right? We have a lot of patients that have PTSD symptoms. We have a ton of veterans. We have people that have experienced extensive abuse, mental and physical. So all of those, we kind of, catch all phrase, obviously, but trauma drives a lot of the behaviors that then, lead to substance use. And obviously over time, it turns from maybe using it because you're experiencing something, you want to numb it, you don't want to feel it anymore,
Yep.
to dependency, to addiction, right?
Totally. Yep. Absolutely. What percent, I don't mean, you don't have to get exact, but I'm just curious on this. On the addiction, is it heavily leaning towards opioids, or is alcohol the bigger one, or what do you see? Yeah.
It's a great question because, the last time we talked was, when was it? 2020?
Almost 3 years ago. Yep.
Okay. A lot has changed in the world.
Yeah.
We went through a global pandemic.
Right.
So that was fun.
Yeah.
The fascinating thing that came out of that was the amount of collateral damage for people with their mental health and substance use disorder across the country. Doesn't matter what anybody's opinion is on how we handled the pandemic, but the reality is that the amount of isolation that people experienced was like really profound, right? And when you're talking about, I'm fortunate. I live in Connecticut. I live in a beautiful neighborhood with other families around. I've got my family. I've got people around me for support, right? A lot of people don't have that.
A lot of people don't. Yep.
And it could be somebody tucked in a little apartment in a big city.
Yes.
Or it could be somebody way out in rural Kentucky. They don't have that. They're isolated.
That's right.
And what happened during COVID was they were isolated for long stretches and they didn't have access to healthcare as well because everybody was just focused on the COVID thing. So it turned into different, different stuff. It was, if you asked me 3 years ago, I would have said it's all opioids, right? And now it's not. About 30%, 35% of our patients are what's called polysubstance use, which is multiple drugs.
I see.
Alcohol, stimulants, and opioids. The other issue that crept up over this 3-year span is fentanyl, right? Heroin.
That's on my list here that I prepared.
Heroin doesn't really exist I'm saying that a little bit
yeah, I understand.
facetiously, but it doesn't really, it's not out there. We don't treat a lot of patients where they're like, I use heroin. It is fentanyl. Fentanyl is everywhere. It's in other drugs. So we have patients that come to us for instance, they have a substance use disorder with stimulants, methamphetamine, right?
Okay.
We do a toxicology screen. They have fentanyl in their system and they didn't even know it.
Oh, and they didn't even know it. Oh,
they didn't even know it, or they knew, but they said, I don't know what's in it. I don't care. I just, I go and get it from my dealer. And, so there's an incredible kind of this crossing over of drugs that's occurred.
So a large percentage of your new clients coming in or new patients coming in now have a trace of fentanyl, a large.
And Nick, fentanyl leads the way in terms of what we treat. Opioids leads the way.
Okay.
We've become much, a resource, I think, hopefully a trusted resource for people with opioid addiction, and fentanyl is the leader in that, right?
Why do you think, I know we could probably do a whole episode just on this question I'm about to ask you. Why are the criminals purposely sprinkling in fentanyl to other things? Like what is the, I'm trying to think like, okay, what's your strategy? What's your strategy here? Like what, I don't understand what, so as a business person, my first thought is, why would you give away free drugs and sprinkle it on things?
Yeah.
Like, are you trying to make them addicted so that you get more sales? Like what are you doing? That's what
it's really, it's really confusing. It's hard to parse out what's actually what's happening. Like if you were, in the drug distribution, business, right? What's the game? What's the strategy? I don't know. You're right. It's probably its own expose podcast. And I think that the agencies that are trying to figure out how to best you know, I mean, look, the DEA, they're an enforcement agency, right? At the end of the day, they're police. They're trying to figure out the best way to enforce and to prevent, and they're having a lot of trouble because there's not like one focus. It's not like, okay, it's the Mexican cartels and they're pressing fake fentanyl pills and getting them out there because it's a quick sale. No, I mean, it's raw ingredients that are coming from China through Canada down through the Ohio River, and you know, someone locally in, you know, Northwest Kentucky is pressing those pills.
Wow.
And so it's really strange. What I go back to though is fentanyl is very cheap to make.
I see. I didn't know that.
The raw,
Actually.
fentanyl is really cheap to make. The raw ingredients are cheap, you know. So it becomes something. It's almost like if you think of it used to be like, well, you know, is it pure heroin or pure cocaine or
right?
And it's cut with other stuff. Well, fentanyl is now the cutting agent in some respects, which is incredibly dangerous because you just don't know if what you're getting. You don't know what the makeup is. So the thing that I always say.
Oh, that's okay. You just educated me on something. Yeah, they used to cut the heroin, cut the cocaine, put some other shit in there to water it down. Yeah. And if fentanyl's super cheap, there you go. That's the cutting agent.
And it's super addictive.
That's how it's.
So this increase in stimulant use in meth, which is it's dramatically increased over the past 3 or 4 years. A lot of that is propelled by fentanyl because fentanyl is so addictive. It changes your brain chemistry, right?
What is it, by the way? What is it? I know like heroin comes from the poppy plant. I'm not an expert at this.
Yeah, you know, this is where, you know, I'm a lawyer, not a doctor, right?
Yeah, me too. I'm a recruiter, not a doctor.
I work with really smart doctors that have, you know, explained it to me so that I can understand it. But really what it comes down to is that opioids are, you know, we have receptors in our brain, dopamine receptors. And opioids go into those receptors and they, you know, they have their euphoric effect. And over time, those receptors kind of get stretched out. Okay. So you need more and more, right? And that's how addiction builds. I see. And you need to keep filling it. Your body it's like your receptors like get fatigued. And the only way to wake them back up is to keep plugging those in, right? I see. And so fentanyl is like a supercharged version because it's so potent that it really fast tracks that reaction in the brain. And you know, whereas a stimulant is kind of in and out of your bloodstream pretty quickly and it doesn't really have that same effect. When you put fentanyl in it, well, now guess what? You're getting the stimulant effect, but you're also having that permanent, you know, brain chemistry damage that's happening with. Where
does it come from? How's it made? What plant does it come from? Do you know?
It doesn't come from a plant. It's chemically. The core ingredient of it is, you know, it's an opioid, right? So there are like core ingredients to any derivative that come from certain plants, like the poppy plant but it's a chemical derivative, so it's created in a lab essentially.
I see. And so
it's bad, you know, it's really, really bad.
You know, I've heard so many nightmare stories about it. And we've even here in Colorado, I have friends that have had, you know, the kids in school, they get something, they don't know it's laced with fentanyl, you know, people dying. Do you believe that the human intention for fentanyl in the beginning was an evil thing, or was somebody in a lab actually trying to create a medicine that stopped pain and then bad people got a hold of it?
Yeah, I mean, look, fentanyl has legitimate uses in hospital settings, you know, anesthesia and pain management. It is an absolutely legitimate there are legitimate uses that
Okay.
it's been tried and true and used successfully for a long time. And I don't think, this is different than what happened with Purdue Pharma with OxyContin, where that was, well, I think as more people know, that was really an effort by a pharmaceutical company to get something out there that they knew was dangerously addictive, right? And that would be handed out to patients with mild to moderate pain that would then cause them to keep coming back for more. Fentanyl was never used that way, right? It was always used in hospital settings for surgeries. And, I went through serious surgeries. I think I might have talked about on our last podcast. And I don't remember what they gave me, but I know I needed pain management. And the tried and true pain management is with opioids, right? And they work. It's just their work under a doctor's care in that setting where they're used at the appropriate dosage, and they're pharmaceutical grade quality. So I think that this is purely that they took that and said, we can make that too.
I see. I watched both of those. There was two movies / series about the Sackler family. One of them. So I watched both of them. I wonder, I'm assuming that in the beginning, the scientists or the lab guys, like I'm assuming that like they really are trying to find something that solves pain that's not addictive. And wouldn't that just be like the ultimate thing, right? I mean, if you could figure out how to stop pain without addiction, that would be like, I don't know, discovering penicillin or I don't know, curing polio, or it would be huge. It would be giant, wouldn't it?
Yeah. No, look, I don't know. Maybe this is me, like ever the optimist. So sometimes I'm starting to feel like I'm ever the pessimist, but I would like to think that the pharmaceutical industry does not always have our worst intentions or purely profit in mind. I do think that, maybe behind the business aspect of it, there are scientists and researchers that are trying to solve for human condition problems, whether it's sick care or mental health, or I don't think that there's like there was like a cabal of nefarious scientists in a lab going like, we've got to concoct something to kill and create so much havoc and damage and suffering. I think that what happens though is that then you attach, it's the American way, right? You attach a profit motive.
There you go. That's right. Yep.
And then somewhere along the lines, it morphs, and it's why as a, and I know you feel the same way, but as a founder and someone who feels like, okay, I've started a business, I have a startup, it's now, growing, and doesn't matter if you're in healthcare or some other industry. You have to have a mission, a vision, and core values. And those have to be ever present with everything you do. With yourself and how you hold yourself accountable, with your staff, with your investors. And you cannot be flexible to your mission, vision, and core values from that perspective, because you will end up doing things that we see in these industries, pharma, insurance. There are a lot of great people that want to help other people that work within insurance companies, right? But we know the reputation that a lot of insurance companies have.
Yep.
How do you square that up? I think it's because they become so big and unwieldy that you've got a subset of people that are like, hey, look, my job every day is to make sure that we drive a 78% margin.
That's right.
All I'm looking at is a spreadsheet. I don't see what the denied care on a surgery that put someone through pain and suffering. I just don't even see it, and that's where it's becomes problematic.
I want to ask you about I know the mental health necessarily is a smaller percentage, but do you see the depression and the mental health, especially of young people? Do you think that's going to grow? And do you think social media is driving that? I'm just curious, is because I would see, I would think that a lot of younger, and I've heard that the girls, especially young women, especially are being affected, and every day they're looking at their phone of like the perfect girl in the perfect clothes with the perfect body, and then they start feeling bad about themselves. Do you think you'll increase in patients because of this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's definitely an element of, I don't want to call it like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but that social media and the increase in the prevalence of people willing to talk about their mental health conditions will cause other people to experience more mental health conditions. I don't want to say that that's what's happening. I like to think more so what's happening is that more people are willing to share, like, hey, I'm struggling, right? I'm struggling, and this is how I'm struggling. But there is, I would say there is probably some element of that social media has an unhealthy effect on people's mental health in general.
Totally.
And, the mechanism for how social media works and what it, some of the behaviors it gets you into are not healthy, right? And then couple that with all of the different kind of pervasive things, like that you have influencers and they all look perfect, and and you compare yourself to them, and then you look at who's most susceptible to struggling with that and struggling with their own perception of themselves. It's our young people, right? It's young men and women that are, that's what they're seeing, and that's what's hitting them in the face every day. But I'd like to think that there's also that good side of social media that, look, it also is a place where some people feel safer sharing that they're struggling, and they might be able to find other people that can help them and communicate with them that they don't have within their immediate vicinity, whether it's friends or family. So there's an element of that too. I don't know.
What happens if the 16-year-old girl, I guess the 16-year-old girl can't call you and sign up and pay and do all, but not with, yeah. How does that work?
Yeah, we are focused on 18 and older, but we get asked frequently to treat patients that are adolescent, teenagers, and we do in some cases. On a case-by-case basis, we do that. The one caveat I'd say is that it is there's unique challenges to providing telemedicine virtual care that maybe in-person care can solve for better with adolescents and teens, not least of which is like parental consent and oversight. What does the parent know versus not know? And there's some, sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable for a parent when you find out that your teen is independently engaged with a therapist online, right? Would be the perception. So we're starting to go into navigating into that. We're looking to work with some of our health system partners to do a hybrid care scenario where we take folks that they're working with in the community, and you can have a little of both, right? You have the opportunity to have greater access to care through us, but then you have that kind of backstop of the local community treater that we can send the individual to if they need extra help.
Okay. I have a question here, and I know we're, gosh, man, I want to ask you about 100 more questions. I can't believe we're pushing up on our time already.
I go for the third podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Quick question. Do I see my psychiatrist's face when I'm talking to him, or is it just?
Yes. Yeah. It's just like this, right? It's, face-to-face video.
Okay, great. Good.
Yeah.
And is it like, I need to talk to you right now, I'm having a moment, or do I have to like?
It can be. No, it can be. We have a lot of really, really great compassionate providers that make themselves available. Almost at like a moment's notice. Sometimes we have to kind of tell them like, like you have to, there are boundaries, right? If you're off work and it's Sunday at midnight, But it's amazing how compassionate our healthcare providers are, that and this is what this platform enables, is that a compassionate provider, yeah, they might get a chat message from a patient off hours and say, yeah, you know what, let me see it right now, and take care of that. And the other thing that we have as a backstop is we have care coordinators. They act as case managers for the patient's care overall. But what they also do is they provide a non-clinical, interventive backstop to help with navigating things. And they're on 24 hours a day.
That's great. Okay, very good. Have you had loss of life? I'm sure you have. I'm sure that's happened where the patients, and that's got to be emotionally, like the psychiatrist that was tagged to that patient, or the doctor that was tagged to that patient, and they find out like, oh, Mary passed away. Like, oof. I bet that's...
It's the hardest part of healthcare in any setting. And I think for us, it's particularly hard because we get to know our patients on such a personal level, right? And so, yes, we have, as a result of substance use disorder, we've had patients who, have committed suicide. And it's never easy. And we take every single one of those very, seriously and personally. I don't know.
How'd you find out? How did you find out?
Well, sometimes we know that something's wrong because the patient is no longer actively engaged in treatment. We're so proud of the fact that we have such high engagement with our patients, and in retention, which is a big thing for recovery from substance use, is staying in treatment, right? And so,
all right,
we might be seeing a patient successfully for 90 days. And we do that, 85% of our patients, or roughly 85% of our patients, make it through that first 90 days, which is a big deal.
That's great.
In traditional settings, it's much lower. It's more like 30 to 35%. So we have really high rates with that. But what happens is they all of a sudden they stop showing up, and we know something's wrong. And then sometimes it's because we call in for a wellness check or an emergency. So we've had that occur, which is terrifying.
After the 90 days, that's a great percentage on 90-day success rate. How about long-term people that fall back into addiction? What is it? Like half come back, half get, I don't know what the percentage is.
Yeah, I mean, so it's variable, right? Because everybody has their own individualized treatment plan and need. Some patients really kind of, I don't want to say graduate out of treatment, but they don't need us as much longer term. So we usually try to get patients, I'll just use opioids as an example, 12 to 18 months of care is where we feel comfortable, by and large, with titrating down our treatment, right? And they may only interact with us less frequently for therapy at that point, or whatever their needs are. But so for us, roughly 55 to 60% of our patients make it into that.
Very, very good. How do you know
that have been with us for 3 years, though, that they just stick with it?
How do you know if they say, yeah, I'm not doing it anymore? Like, I mean,
you don't know. Yeah, you don't always know. We do. I mean, look, we have some, it's like everything else, customer service and satisfaction, and are our patients happy with our service?
But addicts lie. I mean, addicts lie all the time, right? I'm sure they're always like, yeah, I haven't taken any drugs this week.
Well, and that's our thing is, like, we try to build up trust. We want to build up trust so that they feel comfortable sharing that with us when they won't share it with anybody else. Right?
I see.
And that's a big take for sticking with treatment. It doesn't always happen that way. Some people aren't ready, is how we refer to it. We try to. And when that happens, it's like, sometimes we'll tell patients, look, this is not the right treatment for you. You need something different. We can't help you in this setting. You need inpatient care, whatever it may be.
Pretty soon, I mean, it's being able to do a urine sample and a blood sample from home, like that's going to happen soon. Somehow they're going to figure that out.
We do it. We do it.
That's already happened. I see. Okay.
Yeah. So we were, as far as I know, we're the first in our industry to do at-home toxicology screens via 2 ways: oral swab.
Okay.
And we do it observed on camera, so they get. It's like a little cartridge type of thing, and they take it out. It has a serial number etched in. They have to show the serial number. It has to match.
Wow.
So it's tamper evident. And then they do it on camera with a care coordinator, or sometimes with their provider.
How about that?
Tap it back in and ship it off to the lab. So we do that. And then we also do urine. Don't do that on camera. We do DNA verified urine screens in some instances, where we will actually, we'll get the DNA sample first, and then they'll send their urine in. So that's a little harder to navigate, and it's expensive, but so it works. And then we'll work with local labs too.
How about blood?
Blood we're not there yet. Blood is the one we're not there. We have to send them to labs for blood work.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. I'm guessing.
I hope it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, I just foresee at some point. I just think it's going to be like there's a microwave in every house. I think at some point in the future, there's a little machine, and you just you do your urine and blood, and it's just automatically goes to.
I think it'll happen, right? Look, what was it, the Theranos story that maybe set us back from doing at home blood work, but
it's only a matter of time.
It's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. I know. Well, another question. These are. So let's. By the way, PursueCare.com. PursueCare.com. Love what Nick and his team are doing. It's such a. You've followed your passion. You're helping people. You're improving society in general, and making money and generating cash into the economy as an entrepreneur. That's an awesome thing, right? There's a lot of entrepreneurs that, I don't know, make a coffee cup, right? Or whatever. And that's cool, I guess. But if you can make money, generate cash into the economy, and truly just help people improve their lives, like, that's pretty special, my friend. That's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah,
cool.
We're really proud of it. So
pretty cool.
I appreciate that.
Would you ask you this last question? A couple of last questions. I know we're out of time. Would you, if you had the power, if you had a magic wand, would you legalize drugs?
Ooh.
And there's a follow-up question to that, which is, is the war on drugs?
Yeah. Well, let me answer the second question first, because it kind of informs the first question. The war on drugs is a failed war. It's not working. Taking the approach of it's a war, it's a battle, it's a fight. Yeah. It hasn't worked. So if something, it's that whole the definition of insanity thing, right? It's like, we got to stop doing the same things. We got to do something different.
I think so.
We've tried, other countries have tried. I know in Oregon, we've tried, maybe a little bit in California, completely legalizing drugs. And that hasn't really worked either, because I don't think that structurally and systemically we were ready for that, right? We didn't have enough resources around people who use drugs to help them to safely do that until they're ready to get to treatment. So it has to have. Do I think we should legalize drugs? Maybe yes, but it has to come with those structural systemic things to help people to get into treatment, to give them safe ways to use drugs. Hey, you can test this to see that there's fentanyl in it, right? Why don't we should be handing test strips out like candy. It should be like
great idea.
You know what I mean? Like, test everything. Tell your kids, your kids are going to experiment with drugs. We all did, right?
Yep, totally.
Test what you're going to take. Don't be stupid. Don't get killed, So I think that we've got to do that first before we can just go, hey, look, we're going to take the restrictor plates off. Because the one thing I would say about law enforcement, a lot of times it's like, well, law enforcement is all bad and they're putting people who use drugs in jail. And that's not, you're right, it doesn't help. But one thing that can happen is it can be a point where you can interface with somebody and say, hey, we need to change your path, right? and we need to help you to get treatment. And we've had success doing that with corrections facilities. So I think we're not quite there yet, but it may be where we go.
My friend is trying to get me to come do a psilocybin over at his house, and he calls it traveling. He calls it traveling. He's got like a yurt in his backyard. He's got the whole thing set up. And he's like, you and Kim got to come over, and I'll take you traveling. And I'm like, man, yeah, maybe. Let me think about it.
Yeah, it's that's become a thing. I was just asked the other day.
Apparently, it's a thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Somebody I was talking about. Boy, I need a couple days off.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Or something, and they were like, "Well, you're going to go do ayahuasca in wherever
in Alaska or something."
Yeah.
I don't know. If I have like a whole week to kill, maybe.
I was just thinking about like a massage and like regular sleep for a couple of days.
Yeah, there you go. Nick, so great to have you back on the show, man. Really appreciate you. Thank you, sir, for sharing everything, and congratulations on what you guys are doing.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.